Thanks for joining me again today, Francine.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. The last time we were together, you talked about how you think about trauma, its impact on the mind, the body, and relationships. And you gave us a little glimpse into some of the ways that we can work through, deal with trauma symptoms. So today I want us to focus on the work that you do through body-centered psychotherapy. What exactly is that?
What on earth is that? So you'll hear body-centered psychotherapy. You might also hear it referred to as somatic psychotherapy. And ultimately, we recognize that the mind and body are not separate, right? That I mentioned last time that emotions are physiological experiences that we give a name to, right? When I'm happy, my chest feels open, my breath is big and free. When I am scared, right, I tighten up and I can, the mind is interpreting that tightening as a thing that we call fear. And so body psychotherapy recognizes that there's lots of information that's happening in the body, right? The head is a part of the body, but that most psychotherapy methods really focused on the mental process and thinking and trying to change your feelings. One of the things I have loved about it personally is that the body is concrete. And I think it's a thing that appeals also to Caribbean people is there's something concrete for us to work with, right? I'm not sort of going into my history and digging up these conceptual notions about how I was raised, but I'm checking in with what is happening in this in my body, this concrete organism right now, and what are some ways that I can have agency over that experience. So agency, a term that, therapists often use for, I don't like the word control because control has this sense of like, I have to make my body do something. But how can I be in collaboration, right, with what's happening in my felt experience so that my responses are not in control of me? The other thing that somatic therapy looks at also is what didn't get to happen in the past, right? So something happened that was overwhelming, and we are designed to protect ourselves from danger. We're mammals, we're animals. Animals protect themselves from danger. And sometimes something will happen that was overwhelming, and my body mobilized to protect, but it didn't get to do that. And often that's stuck. So every time something similar arises, I go into a similar response to try to complete what we call in somatic experiencing is one of the methods that I use, and we call it the threat response cycle, right? So even if we think about it from the point of view of a pathogen, so a germ comes into your system, your whole body, right, your immune system goes into a high level response to try to fight off that particular germ. And once it does it, it goes back into just a state of normal living, right? You don't need that response anymore. And then you have a higher level of immunity, if you will, to that particular pathogen. So stress and threat can work the same way. Our systems deal with something really highly stressful. We mobilize to deal with it. We deal with it, right? You may have a sense of sort of triumph over your adversity. And then what we know is let's say it was an attack, the body mobilizes to deal with that. We might fight. We might flee. We might go into freeze, just get really still because predators tend to leave still prey alone. We might collapse, right? Or some people might faint. Once that response is completed, the body discharges all that energy. So I might shake. I might find myself laughing. I might just feel flushed or hot. But once I discharge all of that energy that came up to deal with the threat, I can go back to my normal state of living.
It's so interesting hearing you say this because growing up, I used to see people fall out after accidents.
Yeah.
They would literally collapse, fall back.
Mm-hmm.
And just the way that you are languaging it for me is helpful because they've experienced something that is sudden and very traumatic, and they have a physical bodily response.
Yes, exactly. Because, right, like we live in this highly technological age right now, but our bodies are designed as if we were still forest dwellers being chased by wild animals. Yeah, our systems are responding to that deadline at work or that financial challenge as if it is a physiological threat. We only have one threat response system, and it responds to these more, and I don't even want to say subtle threats, right? Because a financial problem is a survival level threat, right? But it responds to those threats in the same way it would respond. So I might find myself being tense all the time, right? Or I might find myself being angry at everybody. That's my fight response is showing up. Or I might find myself quitting jobs all the time or quitting relationships all the time. That's my flight response is showing up. So what from a somatic psychotherapy lens, the first thing that we want to do is be aware, get curious. One of my clients one time came in and she was so proud. She's like, look what I got tattooed on my arm. And on her arm, she had gotten a tattoo that said, be curious. So we want to be curious. Peter Levine, who developed somatic experiencing, says you can't be curious and traumatized at the same time. They're different parts of the brain, right? We're dealing with the thinking part when we get curious versus the reacting part when we are reacting out of just reacting, right, out of our natural inclinations. Let's say I notice that my shoulders are up at my ears, right, and I'm not really breathing and my belly feels tight. That's something I have control over. I can let my shoulders drop, not pushing them down because that's just the opposite. But sometimes I'll work with people, okay, take over that tension in your shoulders and increase it just about 1%. And now stop the effort. Yeah, you feel how you settled too as I did that, right? So we can control those. We can have some impact on those responses. Breath. So I'm a yogi. I use yoga a lot in the work that I do. And breath, how we breathe, again, that feedback loop to the brain. How we're breathing tells the brain how we're doing. So if my breath is way up here, then I'm telling my brain is like, okay, something must be really wrong because that's what happens when people are anxious. But if I can let my exhale happen, just breathe out all the way out. Let the inhale take care of itself. So let the exhale happen all the way out. And don't suck in air, but let the inhale happen on its own. That's the body's wisdom, right? The exhale lowers the heart rate. That long exhale sends that feedback to the brain saying, it's all right. Like in this moment, I'm actually safe. Because that's the other thing we do. We live in the future. We borrow, right? And I think Caribbean people are especially susceptible to this. But everybody is a human thing. We borrow suffering from the future. Yes, but if this thing happened, yes, but if this other thing happened, and we're not thinking about the good things that might happen, right? We're thinking about the disasters that might happen. And then with trauma, often we're stuck in the past as if that thing had never ended that was so overwhelming. Mm-hmm. So another piece of the work is, can I be here in this present moment, checking in this moment, am I okay? Because if you and I are sitting here right now, neither of us is being chased by a tiger, right? So in this moment, I'm actually safe, but I have to be able to engage my senses in order to check in with that. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, I'm operating based on my brain's traveling into the terrible future, or remembering and repeating the past. And I'm not saying to forget the past. If trauma has happened, it's not going to unhappen. But we can recognize the past as separate from the present, right? And so we can deal with what happened from here and not from getting pulled back into it over and over and over again. And the body is here.
What I love about the exercise that you just did is that the inhalation was reflexive.
Exactly.
Because I did it with you, and that's what I found. I exhaled, and then the inhalation just came. So I really liked that.
Okay.
And it is so true what you said about this compulsion to repeat in our minds what happened wrong in the past.
Yes.
And sometimes it's though people get stuck on like this bad recording loop and can't get out of the loop. What do you say to people who say, well, this breathing thing just doesn't work for me. It doesn't help me?
Yeah, usually for those folks, they're trying to, so people will say, take a deep breath. If your chest is tight and your shoulders are up around your ears and your jaw is tight, there are no powers on earth that will create a deep breath for you. And so you're fighting against what's happening in your physiology, right? So I would say to try what we just did. Try just notice the out breath. Even breathe out through your mouth as if you're breathing out through a straw. There's a yoga breathing practice if you want to do it with me.
Yes.
Hands on your cheeks to start with. It's called Kaki Pranayama, and I learned this from trauma-informed yoga therapy with Genevieve Yellen. So just feel that first, right? Self-touch is amazing, and the body does that reflexively all the time, bringing hands to the chest or to the face. So I'm having to work around my earpiece, but hands here. And then take one hand, any one, in front of your face, about 6 inches. On the exhale, gentle exhale, as if you're blowing out through a straw into the palm of your hand.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I was moving my hand around to make sure I could feel the breath.
Yeah, right. So so many things that does, right? Takes you out of your thinking, because guess what? It's usually the thinking that freaks us out. But even just noticing in this present moment, what's something pleasant that you can notice, right? As you look around your space.
What it also illustrates to me is that you really, to allow this to take up space, you have to slow all the way down.
You do, and that's really hard for some people. And so a lot of people have been told that they should meditate. And I can't tell you how many people. So a couple things. You asked about the breath of people who say, I can't do the breathing, right? So I suggested that. The other thing, people are often told to take a deep breath. So they go, inhales increase your heart rate. So now what are you doing? You're just really back where you started, right? So that's one thing that I just want to throw out there is, what if you just notice the out breath, or just notice that you're breathing and allow the breath to be there. Slowing down, for some of us, we have to do that in degrees. Because for some people, being relaxed and comfortable is actually more terrifying than being anxious. Because we're used to being anxious, and when we're anxious, we're tracking for danger. But should we start to relax, all of a sudden it's like, I have to get productive. That's the flight response, right? Because relaxing can feel very vulnerable. And so if that's the case, then you don't try to meditate for 40 minutes, because that's like being in a doctoral level program and you haven't even finished kindergarten. You do a minute or 30 seconds or just that breathing thing that we just did. Nice. Okay, I slowed down for about 5 seconds and I'm off. Next time, maybe it will be 10, right? Next time, maybe I can do 3 of these and really give myself, 30 seconds of settling. So here's a very simple one. Just let your tongue soften and notice what happens. So what does that mean? Some people say to me, Francine, what on earth are you talking about? So press your tongue up against the roof of your mouth. That's tensing the tongue, right? Now stop that effort. And you feel the tongue soften. And you feel what happened in your jaw?
Yes, definitely became more relaxed.
And then guess what? It's a feedback loop all the way down to your pelvic floor. Because the tongue and the pelvic floor are connected. Pelvic floor is a part of our fight and flight response, right? Everything comes online, core. When you soften your tongue, it softens your jaw, your eyes, your rib cage, your belly, your pelvic floor. And all of a sudden, there's a little more ease in the system as a whole.
Thank you, Francine. This was great. You took us through not just cognitive mind examples of what body psychotherapy is, but also you gave us a little taste of even things we might be able to do on our own. So I'm grateful to you for that. Thank you for joining us today. And we'll include in our little description where people can find you if they're interested.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Flavia.